naval attachés in foreign embassies. Then, in March 1915, just as British and French troops were about to land at Gallipoli in Turkey in the hope of breaking the war wide open, and a British Cunard liner, the Lusitania, was taking on cargo in New York Harbor for the trip home, Ewing and Admiral William Hall received a suitcase captured from a German diplomat in Persia. Inside was a copy of the German diplomatic codebook known as number 13040. It was a code breaker's dream find. Of course, over a period of months, the Germans came to realize that their codes were being read, and they issued new ones. But ships or submarines far away at sea often didn't have access to the new codebooks and had to send messages using the old ones. Also, the new codes were often just variants on the old, which meant it was possible for the team in Room 40 to reconstruct a new code from its predecessors. This was exactly what de Grey and Montgomery had done. The numbers at the top of the telegram, 13042, meant that the code was a 13040 variant, which was used for a message of more than 1,000 coded groups. The men set to work. The first word they came up with, the signature at the end of the message, was Zimmermann. That was Arthur Zimmermann, the German Foreign Secretary. Then at the top came Most Secret, followed by For Your Excellency's Personal Information. The Excellency in this case was the German ambassador in Washington, D.C., Count Johann von Bernstorff. So far, no surprises. But the next word they decoded gave them pause. It was Mexico. De Grey and Montgomery looked at each other. This was an odd country name to turn up in a wartime communication. For one thing, Mexico was neutral in this war, although its president was hardly a friend of the Allies and had good relations with Germany and Berlin. The next name they decoded was even more incongruous: Japan. In fact, it popped up several times in this first part of the dispatch. Japan had been on the side of the Allies since August 23, 1914, but alarmingly, the dispatch was worded as if Tokyo were about to become Germany's ally. Thoroughly worried, the two codebreakers worked with fierce determination for the next 2 hours. What emerged was a secret message from Berlin to Washington in 2 parts. The first contained what they knew was a diplomatic bombshell. On February 1st, Berlin informed its ambassador in Washington, Germany would resume its unrestricted submarine warfare against neutral shipping. This was an important warning to the German ambassador, because no neutral country's position was likely to change more as a result of that decision than that of the United States, and no leader's views more than those of U.S. President Thomas Woodrow Wilson. The submarine was a new offensive weapon unleashed by this war, one of the most feared and certainly the most controversial. From the start of the war in 1914, Germany had used its submarine fleet to strangle the Allies' maritime supply lines, especially Britain's. German submarines, known as U-boats, had sunk merchant ships without warning and without picking up survivors, making no distinction between cargo ships of enemy combatants such as Britain, France, and Russia, and neutral ships such as those from Holland, Spain, and America. All those ships unloaded cargo, including industrial goods and sometimes even ammunition, in Allied ports. All were therefore fair targets in the German view. This ruthless approach to war, one that didn't distinguish between combatant and neutral, or even between soldier and civilian, had brought down the collective wrath of the international community on Germany's head, particularly the wrath of American President Woodrow Wilson. As 1917 began, Wilson was working hard to keep the United States officially neutral in the greatest war history had ever known. Most Americans thought he was right to do so. What did they care about a war being fought on the other side of the Atlantic, in Europe, or even farther away, in the Middle East and on the plains of Russia? Just that past November, Wilson had run for a second term as president with the slogan, "He kept us out of war."